Have you ever wondered what it truly means to walk a path where every single moment is lived with purpose, honor, and the constant presence of life and death? It is a question that leads us down a quiet path deep into the heart of history, to a world that feels both distant and profoundly human. Tonight, we'll journey back to a world of silent discipline and flashing steel, a place of serene beauty and fierce loyalty in feudal Japan. As we settle in for our journey, I'm always so curious to know where you're joining us from. Feel free to share your city or country and what time it is for you in the comments below. It's truly wonderful to think of our community gathered from all corners of the world for tonight's story. Welcome to Sleeping Scribe, where calming history stories help you unwind and gently fall asleep. Tonight, we begin our journey not in a peaceful temple, but under the cold light of a full moon, where two shadows are about to clash in a dance of lethal grace. And the story of the samurai reveals its sharpest edge. A full moon hangs in the inky black sky, its silver light washing over a small clearing surrounded by tall, whispering grass. The only sound is the gentle chirping of crickets, a peaceful chorus seemingly unaware of the profound tension that holds this space. Here, two figures stand opposite one another, their silhouettes dark against the illuminated ground, their breath mists in the cold, a visible sign of the life that hangs so delicately in the balance. This is the stage for a formal duel, a deadly performance governed by centuries of tradition. The two warriors are perfectly still, their focus absolute. A soft rustle of silk hakama trousers is the only sound as one shifts his weight, finding his center. They are not merely two men about to fight. They are two philosophies, two lifetimes of training, about to collide in a single, decisive moment. The duel begins not with a rush of violence, but with a gesture of profound respect. Each man performs a slow, deliberate bow, an acknowledgement of the other's skill and the gravity of what is to come. It is a moment of shared understanding in this final, lethal conversation. Then, with fluid grace, the swords are drawn. The cold glint of moonlight races along the curved, polished steel of the katana blades as they leave their scabbards. The sight is breathtaking, a flash of deadly beauty in the quiet dark. The warriors settle into their chosen stances, their kama. One might adopt the yada no kame, a high, aggressive stance, with the sword held above the head, signifying a powerful intent to strike downwards. His opponent may choose the gadana no kame, a low-guard sword pointed towards the ground, a posture of patience and defense, waiting for the perfect moment to counter. Before a single step is taken, the psychological battle begins. One warrior lets out a sharp, powerful shout, a kai. This is not just a battle cry, but a focused release of spiritual energy, designed to shatter the opponent's concentration and assert his own dominance. It is an echo of his inner strength, a wave of force that washes over the clearing. The other remains silent, his will a fortress against the auditory assault. Their eyes remain locked in an intense, unwavering stare, a silent conversation where every flicker of muscle, every subtle shift in posture, communicates volumes of intent. The core philosophy governing this encounter is known as Ikun Hisatsu. It translates to one strike, certain death. This is the ideal that every samurai strived for in a duel. The goal was not to engage in a lengthy, clashing exchange of blows, but to end the confrontation with a single, perfect, and decisive cut. This concept elevated the duel from a mere brawl to an art form, a physical manifestation of Zen philosophy where years of training are condensed into one flawless instant. It is a terrifyingly efficient and beautiful ideal. This very ideal was perfected in the most legendary duel in Japanese history, the confrontation between Miyamoto Musashi and Sasaki Kojiro in 1612. On the shores of Ganru Island, these two master swordsmen met. Kojiro was known for his long sword and his swallow-cut technique. Musashi, ever the strategist, arrived late, unsettling his opponent. He had famously carved a wooden sword from a spare oar on the boat ride over. With that simple wooden blade, Musashi struck down the celebrated Kojiro, a victory of strategy and spirit that became a cornerstone of samurai lore. Back in our moonlit clearing, the stillness finally breaks. The warrior in the high stance explodes forward, but the movement is not clumsy or rushed. It is a graceful, focused motion, a dance of lethal precision. The blades meet with a sharp, ringing clang that shatters the night's silence, a sound that seems to make the very air vibrate. The duel is a blur of motion, a testament to reflexes honed over a lifetime. Even after a strike is delivered, the fight is not over. The concept of zanshin is critical. It is a state of relaxed, continuous awareness. After cutting, a warrior does not simply admire his work. He remains in a state of readiness, his mind and body prepared for a counterattack, his senses alert to any movement. He is completely present in the moment, a lingering spirit of the engagement. This mental follow-through is as important as the physical strike itself. It is a common misconception that every duel ended in death. While many certainly did, especially those born of deep-seated grudges or matters of honor, many others were fought to first blood. A cut, even a shallow one, could be enough to prove a superior skill and satisfy the honor of both participants without the need for a fatal conclusion. The terms were often set before the first bow, dictating the ultimate price of failure. In more formal, ritualistic duels, or in the grim ceremony of seppuku, a second, known as a kishakunin, would be present. This individual, typically a trusted friend or a skilled swordsman, had a solemn duty. Their role was to deliver a merciful death blow, a swift decapitation, to prevent a prolonged and agonizing end. It was considered an act of compassion, a final service to a fellow warrior. Should a warrior's katana be lost or broken in the heat of combat, the fight was far from over. Tucked into his sash would be the wakizashi, the shorter companion sword. This blade was not merely a backup. It was a formidable weapon in its own right, especially effective in close quarters, where the longer katana might be cumbersome. Every samurai was trained to use both blades, seamlessly transitioning between them if necessary. The legality of these encounters was often a complicated matter. Some duels were officially sanctioned by a daimyo, a feudal lord, to settle a dispute between retainers. Others were essentially illegal street fights, spontaneous eruptions of violence to settle a personal insult. The consequences could range from a reward for a sanctioned victory to execution for participating in a forbidden fight. The line between honorable combat and common brawling was often thin. From the deadly perfection of a single duel, we pull back to ask, what kind of relentless training could possibly create a warrior with such incredible skill and discipline? The answer lies in a journey that began not in adulthood, but in the earliest years of childhood, a path of unwavering dedication and immense hardship. The forging of a warrior began almost as soon as a child could walk. For the son of a samurai, training was not a hobby, it was his destiny. As early as age 5, a boy would be given his first sword. It was not a real blade, of course, but a wooden sword, known as a bakken. With this simple tool, his lifelong education in the art of swordsmanship would commence. The rhythmic thwack of wooden swords striking each other in a family dojo was the common sound of a samurai childhood. While the katana is the most iconic symbol of the samurai, a warrior's training was far from one-dimensional. They were expected to achieve mastery in a host of weapons, to be a complete martial artist. Great emphasis was placed on the yumi, the longbow, a weapon requiring immense strength and precision. They also trained extensively with the yari, the spear, which was often the primary weapon on the chaotic battlefield. To be a samurai was to be a walking arsenal of deadly skills. For samurai of higher rank, whose families could afford the expense of horses, horsemanship was a critical skill. This training went beyond simple riding. It culminated in the art of yabasami, or mounted archery. The sight of a samurai galloping at full speed, guiding his horse with his knees while drawing a heavy bowstring to fire at a series of small targets, was a breathtaking display of coordination and skill. This practice trained the warrior for the fluid, high-speed combat of a cavalry charge. But the forging of a warrior was not limited to the physical. A true samurai was expected to be as sharp of mind as he was of blade. His education was comprehensive, including literature, classic poetry, and the elegant art of calligraphy. The goal was to cultivate a balanced individual, a warrior who could compose a death poem with the same grace and focus he brought to a duel. This principle was called Bunbu Ryo-do, the two ways of pen and sword. As a young samurai grew into his skills, he might undertake a musha shuju, or warrior's pilgrimage. This was a formative journey where a samurai would travel the land, often alone and with few possessions. He would seek out other warriors and dojo masters to challenge them to duels. This was not for glory, but for experience. Each duel, win or lose, was a lesson, a way to hone his skills against different styles and temper his spirit in the crucible of real combat. Central to all this training was the cultivation of fudushin, the immovable mind, through rigorous meditation, often staring at a candle flame for hours, or sitting under a freezing waterfall. A samurai learned to control his thoughts and emotions. The goal was to achieve a state of absolute mental calm and resolve, a mind that could not be swayed by fear, anger, or surprise. In the heat of battle, this inner stillness was his greatest weapon. The samurai training regimen often included enduring extreme hardship. The samurai training regimen often included enduring extreme hardship. A young apprentice might be commanded to stand barefoot in the snow for hours, to go without food for days, or to undertake lonely vigils in haunted forests. These trials were designed to build immense willpower and endurance, to teach the body to obey the mind, no matter the discomfort. It forged a spirit that would not break under the immense pressures of war. The feeling of rough, calloused hands from years of gripping a sword hilt was a physical testament to this journey. A samurai's education also included the deep study of military strategy and tactics. They would pore over classic texts, most notably Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which had made its way to Japan from China. They learned about logistics, formations, siegecraft, and espionage. A great samurai was not just a fighter, he was a commander, capable of seeing the battlefield as a complex game of strategy, not just a chaotic melee. Practical skills were not overlooked. One surprising but vital part of their training was learning to swim while wearing full armor. A battlefield could be unpredictable, crossed by rivers or moats. A samurai who fell into the water needed the strength and technique to stay afloat and reach the shore, ready to continue the fight. It was a brutal, exhausting exercise that prepared them for any eventuality. This entire process was guided by the profound master-student relationship known as shite. The bond between a sensei and his student was one of absolute loyalty and respect. The student devoted himself entirely to his master's teachings, and the master in turn dedicated himself to shaping the student into the best warrior he could be. The sound of a stern sensei's voice, offering sharp corrections and quiet encouragement, was the soundtrack to a young samurai's development. Once a warrior's body and mind were forged through this relentless process, they needed the tools of their trade. They required a shell of steel to protect them and a blade of legendary quality to serve as an extension of their will. We now turn to the masterful craftsmanship of the armor they wore and the legendary blade they wielded. The process of a samurai preparing for battle was a ritual in itself. The armor, known as a yoroi, was not a single, clumsy suit of metal. It was a complex system of interconnected pieces, a wearable work of art designed for both protection and mobility. The core of the armor was made of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of small metal or leather plates called kasein. These plates were lacquered to protect them from the elements and painstakingly laced together with colorful silk cords. The most distinctive piece of the armor was the helmet, the kabuto. It was a multi-part bowl of riveted iron plates, offering robust protection for the head. More than just a helmet, it was a statement. The kabuto was often adorned with elaborate crests or medate. These could be clan symbols, golden horns, or even fierce dragons, all designed to identify the wearer on the battlefield and strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. Attached to the helmet was the fearsome facial armor, the mpo. This mask, often shaped into a demonic scowl or a grimacing face, served multiple purposes. It obviously protected the lower face from cuts, but it also served as an anchor point for the helmet's thick silk cords, ensuring a secure fit. Psychologically, the mempo transformed the warrior, hiding his human expression behind a terrifying visage of war. Not all armor was created equal. Different types were developed for different roles on the battlefield. The classic oroyor, or great armor, was a heavy, boxy set primarily designed for mounted archers. Its large shoulder guards provided excellent protection but limited arm movement. For foot soldiers and more agile combat, the lighter dumaru was developed. This armor wrapped around the body, offering a closer fit and greater freedom of movement for a warrior fighting on foot. The soul of the samurai was not his armor, but his sword. The creation of a katana was a semi-religious process, undertaken with immense care and spiritual reverence by a master swordsmith. The process began with a special Japanese steel called tamahagen. This steel was heated, hammered flat, and folded back on itself over and over again. This folding process, which could be repeated a dozen times or more, created thousands of microscopic layers, removing impurities and creating an incredibly strong, yet resilient, blade. The iconic curve of the katana was not intentionally forged into the blade. It was the natural result of a unique tempering process. The smith would coat the blade with a thick layer of a secret mixture of clay. He would apply a thinner layer along the edge and a thicker layer along the spine. When the sword was heated to a precise temperature and then plunged into water, the thin-coated edge cooled rapidly, becoming incredibly hard. The spine cooled slowly, remaining softer and more flexible. This differential hardening forced the blade to curve naturally, creating the beautiful temper line or hamon that looks like a wave along the steel. This incredible weapon was treated with the utmost respect. It was considered the embodiment of the warrior's honor, the soul of the samurai. A samurai would never step over a sword lying on the ground. He would keep it by his side at all times, even when sleeping. To touch another samurai's sword without permission was a grave insult, one that could easily lead to bloodshed. The reflection of light along the beautiful wave-like hamon was a constant reminder of its sacred nature. A samurai on duty would typically carry two swords, a set known as the daisho, which translates to big little. The big sword was the katana, his primary weapon for battle. The little sword was the wakizashi, a shorter blade used for close quarters fighting, for beheading a defeated opponent, or for the ritual of seppuku. Only true samurai were permitted by law to wear the daisho, and it became the ultimate symbol of their class and authority. The greatest swordsmiths became legends in their own right, their names spoken with reverence. Masters like Masamune were renowned for creating blades of sublime beauty and strength, swords that were said to be benevolent and protective of their owner. In dark contrast, the swords of Muramasa were rumored to be cursed, possessing a bloodthirsty spirit that would drive their wielders to violence. These legendary blades were priceless treasures passed down through generations. Just like the helmet crests, the armor itself was a canvas for personal and clan identity. The silk lacing that held the plates together came in a dazzling array of colors, from deep blues and vibrant oranges to rich greens. These color combinations could signify allegiance to a particular lord or clan. Furthermore, the armor would often be decorated with the owner's clan symbol, or mon, making it a personalized and artistic statement on the battlefield. The distinctive sound of the overlapping plates clinking together announced the arrival of a warrior ready for his purpose. Fully trained and perfectly equipped, the samurai was ready for that ultimate purpose, the battlefield. Let's now witness how these individual warriors, these walking masters of combat, came together to form the formidable armies of feudal Japan. The battlefield of feudal Japan was a vast and terrifying theater of strategy, courage, and chaos. Imagine a wide valley floor at dawn. On one side, thousands of soldiers stand in neat ranks, a forest of spears pointing towards the sky. From a command post on a nearby hill, the feudal lord, the daimyo, surveys the scene. He is the supreme commander, the master of this intricate and deadly game of war. His decisions in the coming hours will determine the fate of his clan. The army is a vibrant and organized sea of color and steel. One of the most striking features is the use of sashimono, small banners, worn on the backs of individual soldiers and samurai. Each banner bears the mon, or crest, of their daimyo. This system served as a uniform, allowing commanders to distinguish friend from foe in the swirling confusion of a melee. The sight of thousands of these colorful banners swaying in the breeze above the ranks was both a beautiful and an intimidating spectacle. While we often picture armies of swordsmen, the true core of most samurai armies was composed of archers, or kudoka, and large formations of foot soldiers, known as ashigaru, who were typically armed with long spears. The archers would begin the battle, raining down volleys of arrows to disrupt and weaken the enemy formations. Then, The spearmen would advance in disciplined blocks, their long yari creating a deadly wall of sharpened points. Japanese commanders were masters of strategy and employed a variety of battle formations, each with its own strengths. A daimyo might use the ganku or crane's wing formation, with flanks that could sweep around and envelop the enemy. Alternatively, he might use the gairen or fish scale formation, a flexible pattern designed to punch through the center of an enemy line. The choice of formation depended on the terrain, the enemy's strength, and the daimyo's strategic goals. The thunderous sound of taiko drums echoing across the valley floor would signal the time to advance. In the mid-16th century, a new sound began to echo across the battlefields of Japan. Portuguese traders introduced the arquebus, a simple and effective firearm. This weapon would dramatically change the nature of samurai warfare. The great warlord Oda Nobunaga was a pioneer in its use. At the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, he armed thousands of his ashigaru with these firearms and had them fire in rotating volleys from behind wooden barricades, utterly destroying the famed cavalry charge of the Takeda clan. When armies met, not in open fields but at the walls of a castle, the nature of warfare shifted to the brutal reality of a siege. These were not quick affairs. A well-defended castle could hold out for months, sometimes even years. Attackers would face a series of deadly obstacles, from high stone walls and deep moats to intricate gatehouses designed to trap and confuse them. The view from a castle rampart, looking down at the vast sea of an approaching enemy army, was a daunting sight for any defender. A grim and unique custom of samurai warfare was the practice of head-taking or kubi-tori. After a battle, a warrior would collect the heads of the enemies he had slain. This was not an act of wanton savagery, but a practical one. The heads served as proof of a kill. They would be cleaned, mounted on boards, and formally presented to the daimyo, who would then grant rewards of land, titles, or wealth based on the rank and number of enemies defeated. Communication across a noisy and chaotic battlefield was vital. To issue commands, commanders used a combination of visual and auditory signals. The war drums, or taiko, would beat out rhythms to signal an advance, a retreat, or a change in formation. Another chilling sound was the blast from a horogai, a large conch shell horn. Its deep, resonant moan could cut through the din of battle, signaling the moment for a heroic charge. The sharp, acrid smell of gunpowder would soon join this symphony of war. One of the largest and most important battles in Japanese history was the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600. This titanic clash involved over 160,000 warriors and effectively ended the long period of civil war. The victory of Tokugawa Ieyasu at Sekigahara established his clan's dominance, ushering in over 250 years of peace and rule under the Tokugawa shogunate. It was the last great samurai field battle. It is a crucial final point to remember that despite their enduring image as master swordsmen, the sword was rarely the primary weapon of the samurai on the battlefield. For most of the samurai era, warfare was dominated by the bow and later the spear. The katana was a sidearm, a symbol of status, and a weapon for close-quarters combat or duels. In the grand, sweeping scale of a major battle, it was the reach of the spear and the rain of arrows that truly decided the day. The clash of steel and the chaos of the battlefield defined the samurai's function. But it didn't define their entire world. Now, we'll move beyond the battlefield to explore the society they built and protected. We've seen the incredible skill and power of the samurai in war. But what kind of world did they return to after the battle was over? I'd love to hear what aspect of their life away from the sword you're most curious about. Let me know in the comments as we transition to the next part of our story. Having witnessed the fierce and disciplined world of the samurai in training and on the battlefield, our journey now takes a quieter, more deliberate turn. We're stepping away from the clashing katanas and diving right into the heart of the society they built and protected. It's time to soak in the atmosphere of feudal Japan, explore the corridors of power, and uncover the fascinating world behind those walls. We begin our exploration in the political heart of a feudal domain, the castle of the daimyo. Imagine passing through immense stone walls and heavily fortified gates. The air grows stiller, more formal. We find ourselves in a vast audience hall, its floors covered in pristine tatami mats. The room is filled with the faint, clean scent of polished cypress wood and aging straw. Along the walls, intricate painted screens, or byobu, depict serene landscapes of misty mountains and majestic pine trees. Here, the lifeblood of the province is managed not with swords, but with quiet words and carefully chosen gestures. The court of the daimyo was a world of rigid and unyielding structure. At the very top was the daimyo himself, the absolute lord of his domain. Directly beneath him were his most trusted senior retainers, the karo, who acted as his chief advisors and ministers. Below them, the ranks of samurai fanned out in a complex hierarchy, each with a specific role, title, and stipend. Kneeling silently on the tatami mats, dressed in their formal silk kamishimo, they wait for their lord to speak. The low, respectful murmur of voices is the only sound as they discuss matters of state. During the long peace of the Edo period, the role of the samurai transformed dramatically. While they were always warriors by definition, their daily duties became overwhelmingly administrative. They were the government of the domain. They managed agricultural production, oversaw public works, collected taxes, and acted as magistrates, settling disputes among the common people. A samurai's skill with an abacus and a writing brush became just as important as his skill with a sword. While the daimyo was the master of his own province, he was not the supreme ruler of Japan. That power belonged to the shogun, the nation's military dictator, who resided in the capital city of Edo to ensure the loyalty of the daimyo. The shogunate implemented a clever system of control known as senkenkeitai. This policy required every daimyo to spend alternate years living in Edo under the shogun's watchful eye. Their wives and heirs were required to live in Edo permanently, effectively as hostages. This constant travel and the need to maintain lavish residences placed a huge financial burden on the daimyo, preventing them from amassing enough wealth to challenge the shogun's authority. This system highlights the unique dual power structure of feudal Japan. The shogun was the de facto ruler, wielding all political and military power. Far away in the ancient capital of Kyoto, the emperor lived in splendid isolation. He was considered a living god, a direct descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu, and he remained the ultimate source of spiritual and symbolic authority. The shogun ruled in the emperor's name, but in reality, the emperor held no political power at all. Within the court, life was a constant, subtle game of power and influence. Strategic marriages were a crucial tool for forging alliances and securing political stability. The daughter of one daimyo might be married to the son of another to create a bond between their clans. turning potential rivals into family. These unions were rarely about love. They were calculated political maneuvers designed to strengthen one's position in a complex web of loyalties. The entire social and political system was built upon the concept of giri. This is a deeply important Japanese idea, translating roughly as a sworn duty or a profound social obligation. A samurai's giri to his lord was absolute. It demanded unwavering loyalty, even to the point of sacrificing his own life without hesitation. This powerful social contract was the glue that held the feudal hierarchy together. But it also created immense personal conflict when a lord's command went against a samurai's personal honor or conscience. Beneath the calm and formal surface of court life, darker currents were always moving. The constant political games often involved the use of spies to gather information on rival clans or ambitious retainers. In some cases, assassins were employed to remove a political obstacle quietly and permanently. This hidden world of espionage required a completely different set of skills from battlefield combat, a world of shadows, whispers, and secrets. The process of gaining an audience with a daimyo was a highly ritualized affair. One could not simply walk in and speak. The protocol was strict and unbending. A samurai would proceed through a series of rooms, his rank determining how far into the castle he was permitted to go. Upon entering the audience hall, he would perform a deep, floor-level bow, a gesture of absolute deference. He would remain in this kneeling position, his head lowered, until given permission to speak. These castles were far more than just military fortresses. During times of peace, they became opulent centers of administration, culture, and art. The daimyo would patronize famous artists, poets, and playwrights, turning their courts into vibrant cultural hubs. The architecture itself was a statement of power and refinement, with elegant gardens and beautifully decorated interiors. Corridors might be fitted with special nightingale floors, or yugasubari, designed with nails and clamps that would make a chirping sound underfoot, a clever security system to warn of any approaching intruders. To ensure this intricate system remained under control, the shogunate employed its own internal affairs officers, the metsuke. These officials acted as inspectors and censors, traveling the country to monitor the activities of the daimyo. They reported directly to the government in Edo, and the arrival of a metsuke in a domain was a cause for great anxiety. They were the eyes and ears of the shogun, a constant reminder that no lord was truly beyond the reach of the central government. While politics and protocol unfolded within the silent, fragrant halls of the castle walls, a completely different world thrived just outside. It was a world of commerce, craft, and the vibrant energy of daily life. Let's now walk the bustling streets of the castle town. We descend from the Lord's Keep and step into the Jakamachi, the town that grew up in the shadow of the castle. The atmosphere shifts instantly. The quiet formality is replaced by a lively symphony of sounds, vendors calling out their wares, the distinctive clatter of wooden sandals or geta on the packed earth streets, and the bright laughter of children playing. The imposing castle keep is always visible above the rooftops, a constant, silent reminder of the power that governs this world. The life of the town was governed by the same rigid social hierarchy that defined the court, a four-tiered system known as shi-no-ko-coo. The samurai were at the top, the ruling class. They were followed by the farmers, who were respected because they produced the food that sustained society. Below them were the artisans, the craftspeople who made the goods the society used. At the very bottom were the merchants, who were viewed with some contempt in Confucian philosophy, because they produced nothing of their own, simply profiting from the work of others. Ironically, these merchants were often far wealthier than the samurai they served. The towns were often organized into specific districts based on profession. A visitor might walk through a neighborhood where the rhythmic clang of hammers on steel announced the blacksmith's quarter. Another street would be filled with the scent of fermenting rice from the sake brewers, while another might be lined with the workshops of weavers, the sound of their looms filling the air. This organization made the towns efficient centers of production and commerce. To maintain order in these crowded and sometimes rowdy urban centers, the samurai class provided a form of police force. These officials, known as machibugyo, were responsible for enforcing the law, settling disputes, and ensuring the smooth operation of the town. They were a visible presence on the streets, their two swords marking them as figures of authority that commanded immediate respect. In this economy, rice was king. It was the measure of all wealth. A samurai's annual stipend was not paid in gold or silver coins, but was measured in koku. 1 koku of rice was approximately 180 liters, historically considered enough to feed one person for 1 year. The wealth of a daimyo was determined by the total rice production of his domain. This system meant that samurai often had to exchange their rice stipends with merchants for cash to pay for their daily needs. As the towns grew and a wealthy merchant class emerged, so did a vibrant culture of popular entertainment. This was the golden age of kabuki theater, with its dramatic stories, elaborate costumes, and charismatic actors. Another popular art form was bunraku, a sophisticated form of puppet theater where master puppeteers, dressed in black, would manipulate large, lifelike puppets on stage, accompanied by a narrator and a musician. These entertainments were the heart of urban culture. The heart of the town was its bustling marketplace. Here, one could find everything the region had to offer. Stalls were piled high with fresh fish from the coast, vibrant vegetables from the surrounding farms, and exquisite pottery from the local kilns. The air was thick with the smells of street food, like the savory scent of grilled fish on a stick, or the sweet aroma of toasted rice dumplings brushed with soy sauce. It was a feast for the senses. The very design of many castle towns served a dual purpose. On the surface, they were centers of commerce, but their layouts were often intentionally confusing, with winding maze-like streets, dead ends, and offset intersections. This was a defensive measure. Should an enemy army ever breach the outer defenses of the castle, the town itself would become a disorienting trap, slowing the invaders and making them vulnerable to counterattack. The buildings in these towns were constructed almost entirely of wood, paper, and plaster, making fire a constant and terrifying threat. A small kitchen fire could quickly grow into an inferno that could destroy an entire district in a matter of hours. Because of this, organized fire brigades were incredibly important. These brave groups, often made up of local artisans and laborers, would rush to the scene of a fire with hand-powered pumps and long hooks to pull down burning buildings and create fire breaks. A walk through the town would reveal a clear contrast in living styles. The samurai residences, located in their own exclusive quarters closer to the castle, were typically austere and functional. They were surrounded by simple walls with clean lines and an emphasis on martial readiness. In contrast, the homes of wealthy merchants, located in the commercial districts, were often more flamboyant, with intricate woodwork and storehouses filled with valuable goods. These castle towns were not isolated islands. They were vital hubs of travel and communication, often situated along major well-traveled roads like the famous Tokaido Road that connected the shogun's capital of Edo with the emperor's court in Kyoto. This constant flow of travelers, from pilgrims and merchants to traveling officials, brought new ideas, goods, and information to the towns, connecting them to the wider world. Amidst the structured hustle of the town and the quiet intrigue of the court, the samurai sought a different kind of order, an inner balance and tranquility. This profound search often led them away from the world of men and towards the serene temples and contemplative gardens that dotted the landscape. We now leave the lively streets behind and pass through the tall wooden gate of a Buddhist temple. The sounds of the town fade away, replaced by a profound quiet. The air here feels different, filled with the distinct, calming scent of burning incense and the earthy smell of moss and damp stone. This is the spiritual sanctuary of the samurai, a place to calm the mind and confront the deepest questions of life and death. The philosophy that had the strongest influence on the samurai was Zen Buddhism. Zen emphasized discipline, self-reliance, mindfulness, and a direct experience of enlightenment, rather than a focus on scripture. Its teachings resonated deeply with the warrior mindset. Zen taught the samurai to face mortality with a calm and accepting mind, to act decisively without hesitation, and to find a state of serene focus even in the midst of chaos. Alongside Buddhism was Japan's native religion, Shinto, the way of the gods. Shintoism focuses on the worship of countless nature spirits, or kami, which are believed to inhabit everything from majestic mountains and ancient trees to waterfalls and even uniquely shaped rocks. Shinto did not have complex doctrines or scriptures. It was a religion of reverence for the natural world and for one's ancestors, and it blended seamlessly with the Buddhist practices of the samurai. A central practice for a samurai seeking to cultivate his Zen mindset was zazen, or seated meditation. In a quiet hall, he would sit for hours, focusing on his breath and striving to empty his mind of all distracting thoughts and emotions. This was a form of mental training, a way to forge a mind that was as sharp, clear, and resilient as his sword. Many warriors would practice zazen to achieve a state of ultimate calm before heading into battle. Perhaps the most famous expression of Zen philosophy is the Karasansui, the dry landscape, or Zen rock garden. Stepping into one of these gardens feels like entering another world. There is no flowing water, no colorful flowers. There is only meticulously raked white sand or gravel, representing the vastness of the ocean, and a small number of carefully placed weathered rocks, representing islands, mountains, or mythical creatures. These gardens were not for playing in, but for quiet contemplation, a minimalist landscape designed to free the mind. Many of the most famous and beautiful temples in Japan, such as the stunning Kinkakuji, the Golden Pavilion in Kyoto, were not originally built as public places of worship. They were often constructed as lavish retirement villas for powerful shoguns or daimyo. After the lord's death, his beautiful estate would be converted into a Zen temple, a final act of devotion and a lasting legacy of his power and refined taste. The temple complexes were often dominated by towering wooden pagodas, with their gracefully curved, multi-tiered roofs. These structures were not just beautiful, they were masterpieces of engineering. They were constructed around a massive central pillar that was not fixed to the ground, allowing the entire structure to sway and flex during an earthquake, dissipating the seismic energy. This clever design has allowed many of these ancient wooden towers to survive for centuries in one of the world's most seismically active regions. It was very common to see the beliefs of Buddhism and Shinto blending together in these sacred spaces. A large Buddhist temple complex would almost always have a smaller Shinto shrine located somewhere on its grounds. People would move freely between the two, offering prayers to both Buddhist figures and the local Shinto kami. This harmonious coexistence was a defining feature of Japanese spiritual life. The aesthetics of these spiritual places were often guided by the concept of wabi-sabi. This is the idea of finding beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is the beauty of a cracked tea bowl, the patina of an aging wooden beam, or a single asymmetrical branch. Wabi-sabi is a quiet, humble beauty that celebrates simplicity and the natural cycle of life, a profound contrast to the rigid perfection the samurai sought in his martial arts. The monks who resided in these temples were not always just quiet spiritual guides. Historically, some monasteries became powerful political and military forces in their own right, fielding armies of warrior monks or sohei. But during the peaceful Edo period, monks often served as teachers and trusted advisors to daimyo and samurai, their wisdom valued in matters both spiritual and worldly. As we stand here, the feeling of cool, smooth wooden floors underfoot connects us to the countless souls who sought peace in this space. The serene atmosphere of these temples and gardens was entirely intentional. The high walls, the tall trees, the carefully planned paths, and the sounds of nature were all designed to create a distinct break from the pressures and anxieties of the outside world. The rhythmic clack of a bamboo water fountain, a shishio-doshi, as it slowly fills with water and then tips over, is a sound that measures time in a slower, more contemplative way. It invited the samurai to leave his duties and his sword at the gate. Spirituality provided a deep and steady foundation for the samurai's daily life. But Japanese culture was also punctuated by moments of vibrant, energetic celebration. These were times when the entire community would come together. Let's now join them as they gather for a traditional festival. The formal quiet of the temple dissolves as we step into the energetic swirl of a Japanese festival, or matsuri. The streets, once orderly and calm, are now filled with a joyful crowd. The air hums with the sound of festival music, a lively rhythm carried by bamboo flutes and the powerful beat of taiko drums. As dusk begins to fall, hundreds of paper lanterns cast a warm, magical glow over the scene. These festivals were deeply woven into the fabric of life and were often tied to the local Shinto shrine and the rhythms of the agricultural calendar. There were festivals to pray for a good planting season in the spring, and festivals to give thanks for a bountiful harvest in the autumn. One of the oldest and most famous is the Gion Matsuri in Kyoto. It began in the year 869 as a purification ritual to appease the gods during an epidemic, and continues to this day as a spectacular month-long celebration. The centerpiece of many Shinto festivals is the carrying of a mikoshi, a portable shrine. This ornate, miniature temple is believed to house the local deity, the kami, for the duration of the festival. Dozens of people in festive clothing hoist the heavy mikoshi onto their shoulders, chanting and surging through the streets. by carrying the god through the town. They believe they are purifying the area and bestowing blessings upon the residents and businesses. Even the iconic sport of sumo wrestling has its origins in Shinto ritual. It began not as a sport, but as a form of religious ceremony performed on the grounds of a shrine. The powerful stomps and mighty clashes of the wrestlers were meant to entertain the kami and serve as a ritual prayer for a good harvest. These sacred origins are still visible in the many traditions that surround a modern sumo match. The calendar was filled with beloved seasonal celebrations. In the spring, the entire country would turn out for hanami, the tradition of cherry blossom viewing. People from all social classes, from the daimyo down to the humblest farmer, would gather under the blooming sakura trees to picnic, drink sake, and celebrate the beautiful, fleeting nature of life. It was a time of shared national joy. In late summer came Oban, a quieter and more spiritual festival. This was a time to honor the spirits of one's ancestors. Families would clean their ancestral graves, light lanterns to guide the spirits home, and leave out offerings of food. It was a time for family reunion and for remembering the connections between the past and the present. Some festivals were tied directly to the samurai class and its values. The 5th day of the 5th month was known as Boys' Day, or Tango no Saku. On this day, families with sons would fly carp-shaped streamers, symbolizing strength and perseverance. Inside the home, they would display miniature sets of samurai armor and helmets, expressing the hope that their sons would grow up to be strong and courageous. During a matsuri, the streets would transform into a vast open-air market. The smell of sizzling food and sweet sake would drift from dozens of temporary stalls. There were games for children, like trying to catch a goldfish with a fragile paper net. It was a time of rare indulgence and excitement, a feast for all the senses. The vibrant colors of the light cotton yukatas and formal silk kimonos worn by the attendees created a beautiful, shifting tapestry of human joy. Samurai often had specific ceremonial roles to play during these large public festivals. They might serve as a mounted guard of honor for a procession, their presence adding a sense of dignity and importance to the event. In other cases, they would participate directly in the rituals at the shrine, representing their lord and reaffirming the bond between the ruling class and the divine. Perhaps most importantly, these festivals were a rare and cherished opportunity for the normally rigid social classes to mingle more freely. For a few days, a merchant's son might find himself cheering next to a young samurai, both caught up in the shared feeling of community and celebration. It was a vital social release, a moment that reminded everyone, from the highest lord to the lowest peasant, that they were all part of one community, living under the same sky and praying to the same gods. From the structured world of the battlefield to the joyful chaos of the festival, we have explored the external world that the samurai inhabited. Now, it is time to journey inward, to cross the final bridge into the philosophical heart of their code, and to understand the beliefs that guided their every action and gave their life its profound and enduring meaning. It's amazing to see how much of their world was built around community and culture, isn't it? As we move into the heart of their philosophy, think about which of these traditions you find the most beautiful. It's always lovely to read your thoughts. Our journey through the world of the samurai now takes its final and most important turn. We move away from the battlefields and the bustling towns, leaving behind the external world to venture into the most sacred and quiet of places, the inner sanctum of the samurai's mind. Here, in the stillness, we can begin to understand the philosophy that gave their lives such profound meaning and purpose. Let us explore the very soul of the warrior. This exploration begins with a concept that is both famous and often misunderstood. It is an unwritten code, a living philosophy that evolved over centuries, shaping the choices a warrior made in both life and death. It is known as Bushido, the way of the warrior. It was not a rigid set of rules printed in a book, but rather a flowing current of moral and ethical thought, a silent guide that lived in the heart of every true samurai. Imagine a warrior sitting in quiet contemplation as the day ends, reflecting on his actions, measuring them against this profound inner code. At the heart of Bushido are what later generations would define as the 8 virtues, a constellation of principles that guided a samurai's conduct. The first is ji, or righteousness. This is the power to decide upon a course of conduct in accordance with reason, without wavering. It is the ability to do the right thing, to die when it is right to die, and to strike when it is right to strike. It is the very bedrock of the warrior's moral compass. Then comes you, or courage. But Bushido teaches that courage is not blind recklessness. It is only true courage when it is exercised in the cause of righteousness. To risk one's life for a foolish or unworthy cause is not bravery. True courage is intelligent, strong, and grounded in a just cause, allowing a warrior to face any adversity with a calm spirit. The code also stresses jin, which is benevolence or mercy. The samurai, as a member of the ruling class with immense power over others, was expected to demonstrate a deep compassion for all people. This virtue taught that strength must be tempered with kindness, and that a true warrior uses his power to protect the weak and help those in need, a reflection of a truly noble spirit. Next is rei, which means respect. This virtue goes beyond simple politeness. It is a profound acknowledgement of the worth of others, and a way of showing sincere regard for their feelings. A samurai was expected to be courteous even to his enemies. This deep sense of respect formed the basis of the intricate etiquette that governed every aspect of their lives, from the battlefield to the tea room. Makoto, or honesty, was also essential. For a samurai, speaking and doing were the same action. He had no need for written promises, as his word itself was a guarantee. To lie or to go back on one's word was a profound act of dishonor. This absolute sincerity was a hallmark of the warrior's character. Of all the virtues, none was more central than myo, or honor. A samurai's personal dignity, his good name, and his reputation were his most valuable possessions, worth more than life itself. Any insult or stain upon his honor was a grave matter. This intense consciousness of personal dignity and worth characterized the samurai, and every decision was weighed against its potential impact on his meijo. Flowing directly from honor is chugi, which means loyalty. This was perhaps the most critical virtue in the feudal system. The loyalty a samurai owed to his daimyo, his lord, was absolute and unwavering. This bond of chugi was the glue that held the entire social structure together, a sacred duty that a warrior was expected to uphold even at the cost of his own family, his possessions, and his life. The quiet resolve in a warrior's eyes, as they pledged an oath of loyalty, was a testament to this unbreakable bond. Finally, there is jezi, or self-control. The code taught that a true warrior never showed his emotions in a way that would seem weak or out of control. He endured pain and suffering with a stoic calm. He did not complain or show fear. This was not a sign of being unfeeling, but rather a demonstration of profound inner strength and discipline, the ability to master one's own spirit. This entire philosophy was deeply influenced by the teachings of Zen Buddhism, which taught that a samurai must be prepared for death at any given moment. This was not a morbid obsession, but a liberating principle. By accepting the possibility of death, the warrior could live his life fully and act with complete decisiveness, free from the hesitation that comes from a fear of dying. His life, lived in the constant presence of mortality, became more vibrant and more precious. When a samurai committed a grave error, betrayed his lord, or suffered a deep personal shame, his honor was considered lost. In this worldview, there was only one way to restore it, not just for himself, but for his family. This was the grim ritual of seppuku, a form of suicide by disembowelment. Though brutal, it was seen as the ultimate act of courage and will, a way to prove that his spirit was still pure and in control, even when his life was forfeit. The profound silence that follows such a difficult but honorable decision speaks to the weight of this code. The principles of Bushido were also shaped by Confucianism, the Chinese philosophy that placed great emphasis on social order, duty, and filial piety. Confucian thought reinforced the ideas of loyalty to one's lord and the importance of fulfilling one's role in society with diligence and sincerity, adding a layer of social responsibility to the warrior's personal code. It is important to remember that these ideals were not just for men. Women of the samurai class were also expected to live by the code. They were trained in the martial arts to defend their homes, and they were expected to show the same stoicism, loyalty, and honor as their husbands and sons, embodying the fortitude of the warrior spirit in their own sphere. Over the long centuries of peace during the Edo period, Bushido gradually evolved, with no wars to fight. The code transformed from a purely martial set of principles into a more spiritual and philosophical guide for living a disciplined and honorable life. It became less about how to die and more about how to live with integrity, a journey of perfecting one's character. This profound code of conduct was not just practiced on the battlefield or in the silent halls of a castle. It was also refined, explored, and expressed through a deep and surprising appreciation for art and beauty. Let us now leave the philosophical realm of the code itself and explore the much gentler side of the warrior's soul. It is one of the most beautiful paradoxes of the samurai that these masters of warfare were also often devoted patrons and practitioners of the fine arts. The same hands that could wield a sword with deadly precision could also hold a brush with sublime sensitivity. This was not a contradiction, but a necessary balance. The practice of art was a way to cultivate the inner peace and tranquility that Bushido demanded. Of all the arts, calligraphy or shodo, the way of writing, was considered the ultimate reflection of a person's spirit. A samurai would sit before a clean sheet of rice paper, his mind calm and focused, the earthy, pleasant smell of the solid ink stick being ground on the inkstone with a little water would fill the quiet room. The act of preparing the ink was a meditation in itself, a way of gathering one's concentration. Then, with the brush held just so, he would execute a character. A bold, fluid stroke revealed a confident and untroubled mind, while a hesitant or shaky line could betray inner turmoil. An educated samurai was expected to strive for the three perfections: a mastery of poetry, calligraphy, and painting. These arts were seen as interconnected, each one enriching the others. A beautiful poem would be written in elegant calligraphy, and perhaps accompanied by a simple, evocative painting. This combination created a complete work of art that was a window into the creator's soul. The favored style of painting was sumi-e, a form of inkwash painting that uses only black ink in varying concentrations. The philosophy behind sumi is one of minimalism. The artist does not seek to capture every detail of a scene, but rather its essence. Great importance is placed on the empty space, or yohaku, which is considered as vital to the composition as the painted areas. The sight of jet black ink slowly blooming onto pure white paper is a quiet moment of creation. The subjects of these paintings were almost always drawn from the natural world, reflecting the Zen ideals of simplicity and connection to nature. A single stalk of bamboo bending in the wind, a solitary crane standing in a marsh, or a misty mountain peak emerging from the clouds. These simple images were meant to evoke a mood or a feeling, rather than just representing a physical object. The finished piece is a testament to the power of a few elegant strokes. The link between the sword and the brush was more than just metaphorical. The same principles of focus, breath control, intense concentration, and absolute decisiveness that were required to deliver a perfect sword strike were also necessary for a single, perfect brushstroke. Once the brush touched the paper, there was no going back, no way to correct a mistake. The artist and the warrior both had to exist completely in the present moment. One of the greatest examples of this duality was the legendary swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, famed for his undefeated record in over 60 duels. He was also a highly accomplished and respected ink painter. His works, such as Shrike on a Dead Limb, are celebrated for their directness and their powerful, unadorned beauty. In Musashi, the warrior and the artist were not two separate people, but two expressions of the same disciplined and perceptive mind. For many samurai, the practice of calligraphy was also a spiritual act. They would spend hours meticulously copying Buddhist sutras, the sacred texts of their faith. This was not done for study, but as a form of active meditation. The quiet, scratchy sound of the horsehair brush moving across the textured rice paper was a path to inner peace, a way to quiet the noise of the world. The tools of the artist were known as the four treasures of the study, and were treated with the same care and respect as a warrior's swords. The brush, the ink stick, the inkstone for grinding the ink, and the fine paper were cherished objects. The feeling of total concentration, where the mind, the hand, the brush, and the paper become one, was the ultimate goal of this artistic practice. This devotion to artistic pursuits provided an essential balance to the harshness and violence that was an inherent part of the samurai's life. It was a way to cultivate sensitivity, empathy, and an appreciation for beauty, ensuring that the warrior did not lose his humanity. It was a private, personal journey, not for public acclaim or financial gain. Art was created for one's own enrichment, or given as a precious gift to one's lord, a friend, or a respected peer. Just as they expressed their innermost feelings through the silent poetry of the brushstroke, the samurai also found a profound outlet for their spirit in the carefully chosen words of a verse capturing the fleeting beautiful and often melancholic nature of the world around them. The favored form of poetry for the samurai was the haiku, a short and beautifully concise verse. its strict structure of 3 phrases, with a pattern of 5, 7, and 5 syllables, forced the poet to distill a moment or a feeling down to its purest essence. It was an art of suggestion, of saying much with very little. Imagine a samurai sitting quietly, listening to the sound of a gentle rain falling outside as he composes a verse, his mind focused on a single perfect image. A key element of a traditional haiku is the kigo, a word or phrase that grounds the poem in a specific time of year. Words like cherry blossoms for spring, cicada for summer, or first snow for winter not only set the scene, but also evoke a whole range of associated feelings and memories. This practice encouraged the poet to be a keen observer of the natural world and its subtle, cyclical changes. Much of Japanese art and poetry is colored by a gentle and beautiful concept known as mono no aware. It is a difficult phrase to translate directly, but it suggests a deep, empathetic sensitivity to the transience of all things. It is the bittersweet feeling one gets when watching cherry blossoms fall, a gentle sadness for the beauty that must inevitably fade. It is an awareness that everything in life is impermanent, and that this very impermanence is what makes it so precious. The peaceful Edo period was the golden age of haiku, and its greatest master was the poet Matsuo Basho. Though not a samurai by birth, he embodied the spirit of the wandering warrior poet. He traveled the country on foot, composing verses that captured the simple, profound beauty of his journey. His work elevated haiku from a simple pastime to a high art form, and his poems are still beloved today. Perhaps the most poignant poetic tradition was the writing of a jizei, or a death poem, when a samurai knew he was about to die, whether in battle, from illness, or by his own hand in the ritual of seppuku. He would compose one final verse. This poem was meant to be a calm and clear-eyed summary of his life and his philosophy, a final artistic statement made in the face of oblivion. The simple elegance of the finished poem on the page, with each word chosen with great care, was his final gift to the world. Poetry was also a social art. Educated samurai would often gather for poetry contests, or yudoes, where they would be given a theme and challenged to compose the best verse. The ability to create a fitting and beautiful poem on the spot was considered a sign of a quick, refined, and cultured mind. It was a way to sharpen one's wit and to share a love of literature with one's peers. The arts often blended together. A style known as haiga combined a simple ink painting with a handwritten haiku. The painting and the poem would complement each other, creating a single work of art that was greater than the sum of its parts. This fusion of the visual and the literary was a perfect expression of the samurai's balanced artistic sensibilities. The inspiration for these poems came from the world around them. The quiet moment when a simple observation becomes a profound thought was the seed of a new verse. Basho's most famous haiku captures such a moment. An old silent pond, a frog jumps into the pond, splash, silence again. It is a poem that encourages mindfulness, a deep and abiding connection to the present moment and the beauty found within it. This practice gave the samurai a feeling of connection to centuries of other poets who had stood under the same moon or listened to the same birdsong. The final and perhaps most perfect expression of this cultivated inner peace, this blending of discipline, art, and philosophy, was found in a quiet and graceful ceremony. It was a ritual that transformed the simple act of preparing and drinking a beverage into a profound art form. Let us now, for the final part of our story, attend the Japanese tea ceremony. We leave the world of words and images and enter a small, simple room. The light is soft and subdued. The only adornment is a single flower in a vase and a hanging scroll with a line of calligraphy. Here, the soul of the samurai found its most serene expression in the Chanayu, the way of tea. Swords are always left outside the tea room, a powerful symbol that this space is a sanctuary of peace, a temporary truce from the conflicts of the outside world. The ceremony is guided by 4 core principles. The first is wa, or harmony. This refers to the harmony between the guests, the host, the objects, and nature. The second is kai, or respect. This is the respect shown to all things and all people, a sincere appreciation for the gathering. The third is sei, or purity. This is the purity of heart and mind that comes from leaving the cares of the world behind. The final principle is yaku, or tranquility, the ultimate goal of the ceremony. This profound ritual was perfected in the 16th century by great tea masters like Senno Rikyu. He taught that the way of tea was an expression of the wabi-sabi aesthetic, finding a quiet, humble beauty in simple, rustic, and imperfect things. The tea room is therefore typically small and made of natural materials, creating an atmosphere of calm and intimacy. Every object used in the ceremony is chosen with immense care and treated with the utmost reverence. The handmade ceramic tea bowl, or chowan, the bamboo whisk, known as a and the long bamboo scoop for hot water, the hishaku. Each item has a history and a beauty of its own. The warmth of the handmade tea bowl, held in both hands, connects the guest directly to the work of the artisan. To enter the tea room, guests must often pass through a very small, low entrance called a Nigiri-guchi. Even a great and powerful daimyo would have to crawl through this opening. This brilliant architectural feature acts as a great equalizer, forcing all who enter to humble themselves, shedding their rank and status, to meet on common ground as fellow human beings. The host's movements are a kind of silent, graceful dance. Every gesture is deliberate, precise, and imbued with meaning. The sound of hot water being ladled from the iron kettle into a ceramic bowl is one of the only sounds. The host's complete focus on the simple task of making tea for their guests is a form of moving meditation, a physical expression of wholehearted hospitality. The tea itself is matcha, a finely powdered green tea. The host places a small amount in the bowl, adds hot water, and then whisks it into a vibrant green foam. The earthy, grassy aroma of the high-quality matcha fills the small space. The taste is strong and bitter, and it is often balanced with a small, beautifully crafted, sweet confection that is served before the tea is drunk. The entire experience is an embodiment of the concept of ichigo-ichi, which translates as one time, one meeting. It is a profound reminder to treasure the present moment. This specific gathering with these specific people in this specific room will never happen again in exactly the same way. The tea ceremony teaches one to be fully present, to appreciate the unique, unrepeatable beauty of the moment. In a world filled with conflict, the tea room became a vital, neutral space. It was a place where fierce rivals and even mortal enemies could meet to discuss matters peacefully. With their swords left at the door and the shared experience of the ceremony humbling them, they could find a sense of shared humanity in the quiet, intimate space, allowing for diplomacy that would be impossible anywhere else. And so, in the quiet grace of the tea ceremony, we find the true soul of the samurai. It was a life lived on the edge of a blade, but balanced by the stroke of a brush, the turn of a verse, and the warmth of a simple bowl of tea. They showed us that true strength isn't just about power, but about discipline, honor, and finding beauty in every single moment. I hope this journey into their world has been as fascinating for you as it has been for me. Thank you for sharing this story with me tonight. Our main story has now been told. The great battles have been fought, and the age of the shoguns has reached its conclusion. But history is not only a single straight line. It is also a collection of quiet echoes and lingering shadows, stories that exist in the margins of the grand narrative. In this final chapter, we will gently explore these fascinating tangents. We will listen for the whispers of warriors, often overlooked, and step into the world of those who moved in complete darkness. We will reflect upon the final, poignant moments of an era as the world of the samurai faded into the mists of memory. We begin by turning our attention to the often overlooked but truly remarkable female warriors of the samurai class. These were the Onibugeisha noblewomen who were trained in the arts of war not for conquest, but for the solemn duty of protecting their homes, their families, and their honor. In a world largely defined by men, their stories represent a current of hidden strength and profound resilience. The primary duty of the Onibugeisha was to be the last line of defense. When their husbands and sons marched off to war, they were entrusted with the protection of the castle or the family estate. To this end, they were trained in a variety of martial arts, but their preferred weapon was the elegant and formidable naginata. This was a long polearm with a gracefully curved blade at its tip. Its length gave the wielder a significant advantage, allowing her to keep swordsmen at a distance and to effectively strike at the legs of horses to unseat a mounted opponent. The image of a woman with purpose and grace, wielding the long, sweeping arc of a naginata, is a powerful one. While the naginata was their primary weapon for battle, they were also trained in the use of a small dagger called the kikon. This blade was not just for self-defense. Tucked into the sleeve of a beautiful kimono, it was a constant companion and a symbol of a samurai woman's resolve. It was a tool to be used for protection, or in the most dire of circumstances, to preserve her honor in the face of capture or defeat, just as a male samurai would use his short sword. The tradition of the female warrior in Japan is an ancient one, rooted in legend. The earliest stories tell of the Empress Jingu, a near-mythical figure from the 3rd century. It is said that after her husband's death, she bound her robes to delay the birth of her child and led a successful invasion of the Korean peninsula. Though the historical accuracy of her tale is debated, the respectful silence that surrounds the telling of her story shows that the idea of a powerful female leader and warrior has held a place in the Japanese imagination for a very long time. A more historical, though still legendary, figure is Tomo Gozen. She was a warrior of the late 12th century, and her story is recorded in the Great War epic, The Tale of the Hike. The tale describes her as a warrior of exceptional skill and courage, a beautiful woman who was a peerless horseman and an archer of incredible talent. In battle, she was said to have fought with the ferocity of a demon, taking the heads of many powerful enemies and commanding the respect of all who saw her fight. Centuries later, during the final gasps of the samurai era in the 19th century, the spirit of the Onibugeisha had one last heroic moment. During the Boshin War, a civil war between the shogunate and the new imperial forces, a woman named Nakano Takeko formed and led an independent corps of female warriors. In the Battle of Aizu, she and her unit charged against the modern imperial troops, armed only with their traditional naginata. She fought with incredible bravery before being struck down by a rifle bullet, a poignant symbol of an old tradition facing a new world. For a long time, these stories were considered rare exceptions. However, modern archaeology has begun to tell a different story. Excavations of the sites of famous battles have uncovered human remains, and DNA testing has revealed that a surprisingly high percentage of them, sometimes as many as 30%, belonged to women. This suggests that the Anabu geisha may have fought and died on the battlefield far more often than the official male-centric historical records ever admitted. The training these women underwent was in no way inferior to that of their male counterparts. From a young age, they would practice with the naginata, developing the strength, balance, and skill required to master the difficult weapon. They studied military strategy and were expected to embody the same virtues of Bushido, showing unwavering courage and loyalty. There was a quiet determination in the eyes of a woman who stood ready to defend her family's home. However, the role of the warrior woman greatly diminished during the long, peaceful centuries of the Edo period. With no wars to fight, the strict Confucian social structure came to the forefront, emphasizing more domestic and subservient roles for women. The ideal samurai woman became one who managed the household, not one who defended it. The contrast of their elegant, flowing robes with the deadly purpose of the weapons they once carried became a thing of the past. Their legacy faded into the background, a quiet but powerful testament to the forgotten heroines of a bygone age. While the samurai and the Anabu geisha lived by a code of open combat and personal honor, another group operated in the darkness, using methods that were the very opposite of the samurai's way. They were the masters of stealth, espionage, and deception. We now turn our attention from the sunlit world of the samurai to the mysterious figures of the night. These figures are most famously known today as ninja, but this is a relatively modern term. Historically, they were more often called shinobi no mano, which translates to those who act in stealth. They existed in the spaces between the rigid class structures of feudal Japan, operating in a world of shadows and secrets. Their story is one where myth and reality are deeply intertwined. The popular image of the ninja, clad head-to-toe in a tight black costume, is largely a creation of 19th century kabuki theater. On stage, this costume signaled to the audience that the character was supposed to be invisible. In reality, a shinobi on a mission would never wear something so conspicuous. Their greatest skill was blending in. They were masters of disguise and would typically dress as farmers, traveling merchants, or wandering monks to move through enemy territory without attracting any attention. Contrary to popular belief, the primary role of the shinobi was not assassination. While they were certainly capable of it, their true value to the daimyo who hired them was in espionage and intelligence gathering. A shinobi would infiltrate an enemy castle to map its layout, listen to secret conversations, or steal important documents. They were also masters of sabotage, experts at spreading disinformation or setting fires to sow chaos and confusion before a battle. They were not a social class like the samurai, but rather specialists in unconventional warfare. The most famous schools and clans of shinobi were based in the mountainous provinces of Iga and Koga. These remote regions provided the perfect training grounds for their arts of stealth, concealment, and survival. Generations of families would pass down their secret techniques, their ninjutsu, creating a body of knowledge that was closely guarded. To accomplish their missions, shinobi employed a fascinating array of specialized tools. They used grappling hooks and rope ladders to scale castle walls. They carried smoke bombs and firecrackers to create diversions. Their arsenal also included unique weapons, such as the famous shuriken or throwing stars, which were used more to distract an enemy than as a primary killing weapon. Another was the kusarigama, a fearsome combination of a sickle and a long chain with a weight at the end. The knowledge and philosophy of the shinobi were eventually written down in a series of secret manuals. The most famous of these is the Bansen Shukai, a 17th century text that compiles the wisdom of the Iga and Koga clans. It details not just their tools and techniques, but also their philosophies on deception, strategy, and even the psychology of warfare, offering a rare glimpse into their hidden world. The samurai, with their strict code of Bushido, generally viewed the tactics of the shinobi with contempt. The samurai ideal was to face an enemy openly, to state one's name and lineage, and to engage in honorable one-on-one combat. The shinobi's methods of deceit, disguise, and ambush were considered profoundly dishonorable. And yet, many pragmatic daimyo secretly employed shinobi, recognizing that their dishonorable skills were often the key to victory. The greatest weapon the shinobi possessed was their secrecy. They cultivated an aura of mystery, and many myths grew up around them, suggesting they had supernatural powers, like the ability to walk on water, become invisible, or control animals. These legends were likely encouraged by the shinobi themselves, as the fear and uncertainty they inspired were powerful psychological weapons. Because of this deliberate secrecy, much of their true history remains shrouded in shadow, a collection of whispers and rumors from a time of war. The faint sound of a footstep on a rooftop, barely audible over the wind, is the only trace they left behind. The world of the honorable samurai and the shadowy shinobi, locked in their centuries-old dance of light and darkness, was a world unto itself, stable and seemingly unchanging, but it was not destined to last forever. A great and profound change was coming from across the vastness of the ocean, a change that would alter the course of Japan's destiny forever. For over 200 years, from the early 17th century onward, Japan had existed in a state of self-imposed isolation, under a strict policy known as sakoku, or chained country. Trade with the outside world was almost completely forbidden. No foreigner could enter Japan, and no Japanese could leave, upon penalty of death. It was a long, peaceful era, where Japanese society developed in a way that was almost entirely unique, sheltered from the influences of the rapidly industrializing West. This long slumber came to an abrupt end in the summer of 1853. On a clear day, 4 massive warships sailed into Edo Bay, the heart of the shogun's power. They were unlike any ships the Japanese had ever seen before. They were not powered by wind and sails, but by steam engines that belched thick black smoke into the sky. Their hulls were painted black with tar, and they bristled with modern cannons. The Japanese people, with a mixture of terror and awe, called them the Kurafuan, the Black Ships. The fleet was under the command of the American Commodore, Matthew Perry. He carried a letter from the President of the United States, and his mission was clear and uncompromising: to force Japan to open its ports to American trade and to end its 2 centuries of isolation. He did not come to negotiate, but to make a demand, backed by a clear and overwhelming display of superior military technology. For the ruling samurai class, the arrival of the black ships was a profound and deeply unsettling shock. Their entire military tradition, built upon the sword, the spear, and the bow, was rendered visibly obsolete in an instant. What good was the courage of a single swordsman against the thunderous broadside of a modern naval cannon? The deep, powerful sound of a steam engine was the sound of a new and foreign power that they could not hope to match. The event triggered a massive political crisis, shattering the authority of the Tokugawa shogunate that had ruled for so long. The shogun's government, faced with a threat it could not possibly fight, was forced to relent. In 1854, they signed the Convention of Kanagawa, a treaty that opened to Japanese ports to American ships and officially ended the era of Sakoku. The doors to the outside world had been forced open. This sudden intrusion of foreigners, whom many called barbarians, split the country in two. One faction, fiercely traditionalist, argued for the expulsion of all foreigners and a return to isolation. The other, more pragmatic faction, argued that Japan had no choice but to learn from the West, to adopt its technology and modernize its own society, or it would risk being colonized and controlled by the foreign powers. This turbulent period of debate, intrigue, and occasional violence is known as the Bakumatsu, which literally means the end of the shogunate. It was a time of immense uncertainty and anxiety, a moment when a profound and unchangeable shift in the course of history was felt by all. Samurai officials in their fine silk robes would stand on the shore, looking through telescopes at the imposing fleet, knowing that their world was about to change forever. The smell of coal smoke drifting over the once pristine waters of Edo Bay was the scent of a new and unstoppable era. The arrival of the black ships set in motion a chain of events that could not be stopped. It would lead to a civil war, a revolution, and the dawn of a completely new age for Japan. It was an age that would be defined by industry, empire, and global trade. It was an age that ultimately had no place for the ancient warrior class that had ruled the nation for nearly 1,000 years. The revolution finally came in 1868 in a relatively bloodless coup known as the Meiji Restoration. The last Tokugawa shogun was overthrown, and political power was officially restored to the young Emperor Meiji. This marked the beginning of a period of incredibly rapid modernization. The new government, led by ambitious former samurai, sought to transform Japan from a feudal agrarian society into a modern industrial nation-state, capable of standing on equal terms with the powers of the West. To achieve this, the old feudal structure had to be dismantled. In a series of sweeping reforms, the samurai class was officially abolished. Their domains were turned into prefectures controlled by the central government. Their stipends were converted into government bonds, and most shockingly of all, their most cherished privilege was revoked. They were forbidden from wearing their two swords in public. The very soul of the samurai, his daisho, was now little more than a historical artifact. For many of the millions of men who belonged to this class, the transition was devastating. They had lost not just their income and their social status, but their very reason for being. For centuries, their entire identity had been tied to their role as warriors and rulers. Now, in this new world of factories and foreign trade, they were a class without a purpose. This deep sense of loss and disillusionment found its final tragic champion in a man named Seigo Takamori. He had been one of the key leaders of the Meiji Restoration, a hero who had helped to create the new government, but he became deeply troubled by the speed with which the new leaders were abandoning Japanese traditions. He believed the soul of the nation was being lost. In 1877, he agreed to lead a final, desperate stand of the traditional samurai against the new government. This was the Satsuma Rebellion. Saigo gathered an army of proud but disgruntled samurai, and they marched out to fight, armed with their swords, spears, and a profound sense of honor. The image of these warriors, in their traditional armor, facing an army equipped with modern rifles and cannons, is one of the most poignant in all of history. They faced the new Imperial Japanese Army, a modern force composed not of noble warriors, but of conscripted peasants. This new army was trained by Western advisors and equipped with the latest firearms and tactics. The rebellion was doomed from the start. The final engagement took place at the Battle of Shiroyama. Saigo and his last few hundred loyal samurai were surrounded on a small hill. As the sun rose, they saw the new government's flag, a red sun on a white field, flying over the thousands of soldiers who encircled them. Knowing the end had come, they drew their swords and made one last, defiant charge against impossible odds. Saigo Takamori, gravely wounded, ended his own life in the traditional samurai way. With his death, the rebellion was over, and the last flicker of the samurai age was extinguished. He became a tragic hero in Japanese history, a man who embodied all the virtues of Bushido, even in a final, hopeless defeat. The quiet dignity of a warrior accepting that his era is past is the lasting image of his story. It was the feeling of a long and important chapter of history coming to a quiet, somber, and inevitable close. It simply transformed many former samurai, with their tradition of discipline and leadership, adapted to the new era and went on to become pioneers in business, politics, science, and education, helping to build the foundations of modern Japan. And so the age of the warrior came to a gentle end. The samurai as a class may have faded into history, but their ideals of discipline, honor, art, and resilience became a timeless legacy. Their story reminds us that even in a world of constant change, a life lived with purpose and a deep appreciation for beauty leaves an echo that can be felt forever. I hope you've enjoyed these quiet reflections. And now, our story has come to its end. The narrative has faded, the characters have taken their final bow, and the great sweep of history has settled into a deep and peaceful quiet. In this final part of our journey, there is no longer a path to follow, no destination to reach. There is only a space of pure tranquility, a place for our minds to rest and observe the most serene and gentle details of the world we have explored. The pace is now at its absolute slowest. The goal is simply to be present, to listen, and to drift into a state of deeper stillness. Our final meditation begins in a place of quiet focus and elemental transformation. We find ourselves in the secluded forge of a master swordsmith. The air is warm and still, thick with the scent of charcoal and hot metal. There is no noise from the outside world, only the soft, sleeping sounds of the workshop. Here, in this humble sanctuary, an almost spiritual process is about to unfold. It is the art of the blade, a slow and meditative journey that transforms raw earth into an object of legendary beauty and soul. The journey of the sword begins long before the first hammer falls. It begins with a special and sacred steel known as tamahagen. This is not a metal that is simply mined and melted. It is born from a patient and ancient process. It starts as black iron sand, gathered from the beds of Japanese rivers. This sand, a gift from the mountains, is then brought to a traditional clay furnace, a great earthen structure called a tatara. For 3 days and 3 nights, the tatara is fed a constant diet of charcoal, its belly burning with an intense heat. It is a slow, rhythmic process of feeding and tending, a vigil kept by the master smelter until, in the heart of the fire, the iron sand gives up its pure steel heart. The resulting bloom of metal is the tamahagen, a raw, textured, and living material ready for the smith. The swordsmith who receives this precious steel is more than just a craftsman. He is a priest officiating a sacred rite. Before he begins his work, he prepares his body and his spirit. He may dress in the simple, pure white robes of a Shinto priest, a symbol of his ritual purity. His forge is a holy space, marked with sacred ropes of woven rice straw to ward off any negative influences. He will perform purification rituals, perhaps washing his hands and face in cold water, or offering a quiet prayer to the kami, the spirits of his craft and his ancestors. He is not merely making an object. He is inviting a spirit to inhabit the steel, and this requires a state of absolute reverence and focus. The true work now begins, and it is a process of rhythmic, meditative labor. The smith selects the best pieces of tamahagen and heats them in the glowing embers of the forge until they shine with the color of the rising sun. Then he brings the steel to the anvil, and the forge is filled with the gentle, rhythmic sound of a hammer striking red-hot metal. He hammers the block flat, then scores it and folds it back on itself. It is plunged back into the fire, and the process repeats. Heat, hammer, fold. Heat, hammer, fold. This is not a violent act, but a purifying one. With each fold, impurities are beaten out of the steel, and the carbon content is evenly distributed. The number of folds can be as high as 16. A process that creates many thousands of microscopic layers within the steel, giving the blade its legendary combination of strength and resilience. Once the foundational billet of steel has been forged and folded to perfection, the smith begins the most crucial and artistic stage of the process. He carefully coats the blade in a secret mixture of clay, charcoal, and other ingredients, a recipe passed down through generations. He does not coat the blade evenly. A thick, insulating layer is applied to the spine and the body of the sword, while a much thinner layer is painted along the sharp edge. The smith may use a feather or a fine brush to create a delicate, wavy pattern in the clay along this line. This act, done with the focus of a calligrapher, is what will later give the sword its unique and personal signature. With the clay coating now dry, the moment of transformation is at hand. The smith heats the blade one last time to a precise temperature, a color he recognizes not with a gauge, but with his own experienced eyes. Then, in a single, fluid motion, he plunges the hot blade into a trough of water. The forge is filled with a loud, dramatic hiss of steam as the water boils violently around the steel. This is the quenching, the moment the blade is truly born. The thinly coated edge cools with incredible speed, becoming hard as glass, while the thickly coated spine cools more slowly, remaining softer and more flexible. This differential hardening is what gives the katana its strength, and it is also what forces the blade to naturally curve into its iconic, graceful shape. When the blade is pulled from the water, a magical pattern has appeared along the edge. This is the hamon, or the temper line. It is the visible boundary between the hard steel of the edge and the softer steel of the spine. Its shape, which might look like gentle waves, a field of cloves, or the misty clouds on a mountaintop, is the direct result of the pattern the smith painted in the clay. The hamon is the unique signature of the swordsmith, a beautiful, accidental piece of art born from fire and water, and no two are ever exactly alike. The deep, lustrous sheen of the blade, reflecting the light like calm water, begins to hint at its final beauty. The blade is now forged, but it is far from finished. Its beauty is hidden beneath a dark, scaled surface left by the fire. Now begins the long and patient process of polishing. This is a task often entrusted to a specialist polisher, another master craftsman in his own right. For weeks, sometimes even for a month, the polisher will sit, drawing a series of progressively finer stones along the blade's surface. The quiet, repetitive, scratching sound of the stone being drawn again and again across the steel is the only sound in the workshop. With each finer grade of stone, the blade's geometry is perfected. Its surface becomes smoother, and the intricate details of the folded steel and the beautiful hamon are slowly, magically revealed. While the blade is being polished, other artisans are at work creating the sword's furniture. Its crochet, the hilt or suka, is carved from wood to fit the blade's temps perfectly. This wooden core is then covered in the rough, pebbled skin of a stingray known as samagawa. This provides a textured surface for a secure grip. Over this, a long, flat cord of silk or cotton, the ito, is intricately wrapped in a traditional pattern, creating a beautiful and functional handle that is a work of art in itself. One of the most expressive parts of the sword's fittings is the tsuba, the handguard. The tsuba is not just a protective piece of metal. It is a canvas for some of the most intricate and beautiful metalworking in Japanese art. Samurai would choose tsuba that reflected their personal taste or philosophy. They could be simple, elegant iron discs, or they could be lavishly decorated with sculpted images of dragons, scenes from mythology, or quiet moments from nature, like a cricket resting on a blade of grass. They were small, personal works of art that a samurai carried with him every day. Finally, after weeks or even months of painstaking work by many different master craftsmen, all the individual pieces are ready. The polisher delivers the gleaming, flawless blade. The hilt has been wrapped, the scabbard lacquered, and the tsuba is finished. The final assembly of the sword is a quiet and reverent moment. The hilt is fitted over the tang, the guard and other fittings are put in place, and a small bamboo pin is inserted to hold everything securely together. The sword is now whole, a perfect harmony of form and function. In the eyes of the samurai and the smith, this object is no longer just a weapon. Through the rituals, the focused intention, and the incredible labor that went into its creation, the sword is now believed to possess its own spirit, its own soul. It is a living thing, a partner to the warrior, and a physical embodiment of the ideals of purity, strength, and beauty. The finished blade rests silently, its journey from the earth complete. From the quiet, intense focus of the forge, we now move to an art form that requires an equally gentle hand and an equally peaceful mind. We leave the world of fire and steel and enter a simple, tranquil room filled with soft, natural light. Here, we will observe the art of flower arrangement, a practice known in Japan as ikebana. The word ikebana is often translated as arranging flowers, but its deeper meaning is closer to making flowers live. This is the key to understanding its philosophy. The goal is not simply to create a beautiful decoration, but to engage in a spiritual practice, a quiet and moving meditation that seeks to find the life and the essential character of the flowers and branches being arranged. It is a gentle art that reveals the profound beauty of nature in its purest form. The origins of ikebana are found in the quiet halls of Buddhist temples. Long ago, monks would make simple floral offerings at the altars of the Buddha. These were not elaborate bouquets, but humble arrangements of flowers and branches, offered as a gesture of reverence for the beauty and transience of life. Over centuries, this simple religious practice slowly evolved into a sophisticated and deeply philosophical art form. But it has never lost its connection to that original sense of spiritual contemplation. At the heart of many traditional ikebana arrangements is the creation of a balanced, asymmetrical triangle. This is not just a design choice, it is a representation of the cosmos. The three main stems that form the structure of the arrangement hold a symbolic meaning. The tallest stem, reaching towards the sky, is called Shin, and it represents heaven. The middle stem, called So, represents man, and the lowest stem, Haikai, represents the earth. In the harmonious placement of these three elements, the artist creates a miniature living model of the universe. In the art of ikebana, the empty space is just as important as the flowers themselves. This concept is fundamental to so much of Japanese art. The negative space, the quiet areas where there are no leaves or blossoms, is what gives the arrangement its rhythm, its balance, and its sense of life. Unlike a dense Western bouquet that seeks to fill a vase, ikebana uses space to draw the eye to the unique beauty of each individual element, allowing the entire composition to breathe. The practice of ikebana also teaches an appreciation for the whole plant. The focus is not just on the colorful blossom. The artist pays close attention to the elegant curve of a stem, the shape and texture of a single leaf, and even the simple form of the vase itself, which is considered an integral part of the arrangement. Every element is chosen with care and is respected for its own unique character, creating a complete and unified work of art. Over the centuries, many different schools and styles of ikebana have developed. Some, like the classical Ricker style, are large, complex, and highly symbolic, originally created to decorate the grand halls of temples and palaces. Other styles are much simpler and more natural. The Nagir style, for example, uses a tall, narrow vase and seeks to create an arrangement that feels spontaneous and effortless, as if the flowers were simply tossed or thrown in and landed in a state of natural, unassuming beauty. The changing of the seasons is deeply important to the art of ikebana. An arrangement should always reflect the current time of year, creating a connection between the interior space and the natural world outside. In the spring, an arrangement might feature the delicate, hopeful branches of a cherry blossom. In the summer, a lush iris with its deep green leaves. In autumn, a vibrant chrysanthemum or a branch of fiery maple. And in the starkness of winter, a simple, bare branch and a single camellia blossom can speak volumes about resilience and the promise of life to come. The act of creating an ikebana arrangement is a form of quiet meditation. The artist must first be still, letting go of the distractions of the day. They must observe each branch, each flower, and listen to what it has to say. With slow, deliberate movements, they use the quiet snip of shears to trim a stem to the perfect length. There is no rush, There is only a patient and gentle dialogue between the artist and the materials, a search for the perfect balance and harmony. The subtle, fresh fragrance of the flowers and green leaves fills the peaceful atmosphere of the room. The ultimate goal of ikebana is not to create a dense and overwhelming explosion of color. It is to achieve an elegant, simple, and beautifully balanced composition that captures the essence of nature. A single, elegant branch reaching towards the sky in a simple ceramic vase can often be more powerful and more moving than 100 flowers crowded together. It is an art form that teaches one to see the profound beauty in simplicity. This gentle and contemplative art was practiced by many samurais in a life that was often defined by conflict and discipline. The practice of ikebana was a way to cultivate tranquility, gentleness, and a sensitivity to the subtle beauties of the world. It was a necessary balance to the hardness of their martial training, a reminder that true strength must always be tempered with compassion and an appreciation for the fleeting, fragile beauty of life. This deep and abiding appreciation for nature's quiet beauty finds its largest and most immersive expression in the landscapes the samurai and nobility designed and cherished. From the quiet room of flowers, our journey now takes us outside, on a slow and peaceful walk through a classic Japanese garden. As we step onto the winding path, the first thing we notice is that a Japanese garden is not simply a collection of beautiful plants. It is a carefully composed and idealized vision of the natural world, a miniature landscape designed for peaceful contemplation. Every element within it, from the largest stone to the smallest patch of moss, is placed with the care and intention of a master painter composing a masterpiece on a canvas of earth and stone. The key elements of the garden reveal themselves slowly as we walk. There is always the presence of water, perhaps in the form of a large, placid pond that mirrors the sky, or a small, winding stream that fills the air with the gentle sound of its movement. There are rocks, ancient and weathered, that form the bones of the landscape. There are elegant stone lanterns, graceful bridges, and a carefully chosen palette of plants that provide beauty and interest in every season. We pause for a moment and look beyond the garden's edge. Here we can see a principle known as shike, or borrowed scenery. The garden's designer has cleverly framed a view of a distant, mist-covered mountain, making it seem as though the mountain itself is a part of the garden's composition. In this way, the small, enclosed world of the garden is connected to the vast, expansive world of nature that lies beyond it. The path we are following is not straight. It meanders and winds, and with each gentle turn, a new and perfectly composed scene is revealed to us. This is a deliberate design choice. The garden is not meant to be seen all at once. It is a journey of slow discovery, a series of beautiful moments that unfold one after another, encouraging a slower, more mindful way of walking and observing the world. We come across a grouping of large, moss-covered rocks. They have been placed with extraordinary care. A tall, upright stone might represent a distant mountain peak. A low, flat rock could be an island resting in a sea of raked gravel. Another arched rock might even suggest an animal, like a resting ox. These stones are not just decorations. They are the spiritual heart of the garden, timeless and enduring elements that give the landscape its character and its strength. The path leads us to the edge of a large pond. The water is still and clear, and just below its surface, we can see brightly colored koi fish swimming in lazy, graceful circles. Their vibrant shades of orange, white, and gold are like living jewels in the water. We watch as the reflection of a red-leafed Japanese maple on the far bank shimmers on the pond's surface, a perfect, fleeting painting of autumn beauty. Dotted throughout the garden are old stone lanterns, known as toro. Originally, their purpose was purely functional, used to light the paths of temples and shrines at night. But over time, they became a key aesthetic element in garden design. We see one standing silently among the trees, its stone roof covered in a soft, green blanket of moss. It has an air of quiet antiquity, a feeling of having watched over this peaceful scene for centuries. The plants that grow here have all been chosen for their seasonal beauty and their deep cultural symbolism. There are the sturdy, evergreen pine trees, which represent longevity and steadfastness. In the spring, the cherry trees erupt in a cloud of pale pink blossoms, a beautiful reminder of the transience of life. And here, in the autumn, the Japanese maples set the garden ablaze with their fiery shades of crimson and gold. The feeling of soft, green moss under your fingertips connects you to the deep, quiet life of the garden. You will find no straight lines or perfect symmetry here. A Japanese garden strives to create a sense of natural, balanced asymmetry. The goal is not to impose a rigid, man-made order on nature, but to work with its inherent beauty to create a landscape that feels both perfectly designed and completely natural at the same time. The pleasant, earthy smell of the damp ground and foliage after a light rain fills the air. Our slow walk has been a meditation in motion. These gardens were designed for exactly this purpose, to be a sanctuary, a peaceful escape from the demands and anxieties of the everyday world. They are spaces that invite quiet contemplation, encouraging the visitor to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to reconnect with the simple, profound beauty of the natural world. Our peaceful journey through the world of the samurai is now coming to its final, quiet close, leaving us with the calming sounds and images of their most serene traditions. Our journey has taken us through sights of profound beauty, from the glowing steel of the forge, to the simple grace of a single flower, to the composed perfection of a garden. Now, in our final moments together, we turn our attention from the things we can see to the things we can hear, and perhaps most importantly, to the spaces between the sounds. We will conclude with a meditative reflection on the importance of silence and the subtle, gentle sounds of the world we have been exploring. Central to the Japanese appreciation of sound is a concept known as ma. Ma is the space between things, the interval, the pause. In music, it is the silence between the notes. In a room, it is the empty space. In conversation, it is the comfortable pause. Ma is not an absence of something. It is a presence in its own right. It is the silent, empty canvas that gives shape and meaning to everything else. This appreciation for the power of silence is the key to understanding the soundscape of their world. Perhaps no sound captures this spirit more perfectly than that of the shakuhachi. This is a simple, end-blown bamboo flute. For centuries, it was played by a sect of wandering Zen monks known as komuso. They would travel the roads with their faces hidden by large woven baskets, playing the flute not for an audience, but as a form of blowing Zen, a meditation practice. The sound they created is lonely, breathy, and deeply meditative. It is a sound that seems to be half breath and half tone, a sound that does not fill the silence, but rather seems to emerge from it and then fade back into it. Imagine the sound of a single shakuhachi flute echoing in a quiet, misty valley. Another instrument that evokes the gentle sounds of nature is the koto. This is a long, stringed instrument, placed on the floor and played with picks worn on the fingers. Its sound is clear, precise, and evocative. The music played on the koto often seeks to replicate the sounds of the natural world. A rippling arpeggio might suggest the sound of flowing water in a stream. A series of soft, plucked notes could be the sound of raindrops falling from the leaves of a tree. It is music that paints a picture, a serene and calming auditory landscape. A much older instrument is the biwa, a type of short-necked lute. Its sound is more resonant and percussive, and it was the chosen instrument of traveling storytellers. For centuries, blind monks would recite the great epic tales of the samurai, like the tale of the hike, accompanying their powerful stories of battle and honor with the dramatic sound of the biwa. Today, we can hear its sound as a distant, fading echo of that heroic and turbulent past. Even the simplest sounds were cultivated to create a feeling of peace. In the heat of the summer, a homeowner might hang a small wind chime, a furin, from the eaves of the house. These are often made of glass or metal, with a strip of paper that catches the breeze. The delicate, clear tinkle of the wind chime is a sound that has become synonymous with summer in Japan. It is a subtle sound that does not intrude, but simply suggests the presence of a cool breeze, creating a psychological feeling of refreshment and calm. The sounds of nature itself were deeply cherished and woven into the fabric of their art and their daily lives. The loud, droning cry of the cicada in late summer was not seen as a nuisance, but as the quintessential sound of that season. The beautiful song of the nightingale in the spring was a celebrated event, a sound that inspired countless poems and paintings. This close and attentive listening to the natural world was a form of daily mindfulness. Silence was not something to be filled, but something to be cultivated. The profound and calming sound of absolute silence in a temple garden at dawn was not an emptiness, but a fullness. It was a state to be cherished, a space where the mind could become clear and still. The silence of a Zen meditation hall, broken only by the sound of breathing, was a tool for reaching a deeper state of awareness. This power of the pause was used even in their art forms. In the slow and deliberate movements of no theater, a long, dramatic pause, where a character remains perfectly still and silent, can often convey more grief, tension, or joy than any spoken word. The audience is invited into that space of silence to feel the emotion of the moment for themselves. The silence is where the real meaning is found. This appreciation for quiet extends to the smallest sounds of daily life. The gentle, hollow knocking of a bamboo deer scarer in a garden, a shishiodoshi, as it fills with water and then tips over to strike a rock, becomes a kind of slow, meditative clock, marking the peaceful passage of time. The soft rustle of a silk kimono, the quiet whisking of tea in a bowl, the gentle sound of a broom sweeping a tatami mat. These were not just noises, they were the sounds of a mindful, peaceful, and present existence. This deep and profound appreciation for the power of silence and for the simple, subtle sounds of the world is perhaps the final and most lasting testament to the contemplative nature of the culture we have been exploring. And so, we are left here, in this quiet place, with nothing but the most peaceful sounds and images of this ancient world, a perfect place to rest. Our journey through the world of the samurai is now complete. We have walked in their footsteps, from the heat of battle to the stillness of the Zen garden, and have found a world of profound depth and beauty. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on this adventure. I hope it has brought you comfort, fascination, and peace. If you've enjoyed our time together, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Sleeping Scribe for more calming history stories. Your support means the world to us. For now, there is nothing left to do but rest. May your dreams be peaceful and your sleep deep and refreshing. Good night.